The following is a presentation of Project Independence and WCWP. Project Independence is the Aging in Place initiative of the town of North Hempstead.
Welcome to Project Independence and You.
Good morning and welcome to Community Talk Radio. This is Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio. I'm your host and producer, Kristina Lou, along with my co-host, Otto, volunteer, friend, supporter, the face of PI really, the Founding Father Award winner, Otto Los, that Otto Los you might know. And Otto, today we are talking about something really important, and we're so fortunate in our area, especially in the town, to have so many wonderful organizations. And one of those is the Sid Jacobson JCC. And today we're talking about all of their older adult specialized services. And joining us is Ellyn Troisi, and she is the nurse practitioner and senior director of older adult specialized services, and Lindsay Pernick, who is the director of adult day programs. So we're going to talk about day services, dementia, caregiver support, socialization, and all the wonderful things you guys are doing for our community. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Great. We are so happy to have you. There's a lot to cover in preparing this. So I guess we'll just start from wherever with like what kind of services are geared towards, seniors in the JCC.
Okay. I guess we wanted to just talk a little bit about an overview of what the JCC offers. We have it's a community center, and basically we see people from the age of 2 to the age of 102 with various different programs and resources, and we have a huge health and wellness facility with an indoor pool that also allows people to do one-on-one training and take different classes in a group setting. So we have lots of seniors who take part in that. Additionally, we have a food pantry for food insecure people who need some help with their weekly food, and we have volunteers who deliver the food to people in the community. We have a cancer wellness program where we have support groups and programming for survivors of cancer. And we also have a new center that started a couple of years ago for a Center for Resilience, where we're kind of promoting preventative mental health programs to kind of nurture the mind and the body through workshops and mindfulness-based programs. So that's kind of an overview of the JCC. We wanted to talk a little bit about the impact of the partnerships that we have in the community, and how collaborations with both local healthcare providers, community organizations, and other agencies really help connect older adults to our services. And one of them is the town of North Hempstead, and we work with them, and the money that we receive really helps defray the cost of the adult day programs and reduces expenses for participants who are going to take part in our programs on a weekly basis, on a daily basis. And then we have Project Independence, which helps with transportation to and from our programs. So there are a lot of terrific community partnerships out there that really help us do what we do on a daily basis, and it's so important, to work with other organizations.
How do you have a pretty good menu there of things that in a short span that people could use depending on their circumstances. How would they start
That's a
with
great
JCC?
question. Yes.
Okay, you have a lot of great things, but who do I call? Is there one place I can call?
Yeah, so we have a social worker that does an intake and an assessment. We're working on a program called Social RX, which is a terrific program that mitigates social isolation for older adults. So we have our social worker who will speak with somebody on the phone, kind of do an assessment, see what you would be interested in, where you'd like to try and come into the JCC, and then really kind of, drive you to that area and refer you with a warm handoff to another professional.
Our social services has 6 different centers that are all geared towards working with different populations. So there's also different social workers at each center. So when Ellyn says the social isolation and really connecting to those individuals that will then be able to hand off and really schedule an assessment, get to know the individual, and really determine what the need is, and then we're able to figure out how we can meet that need.
That's great.
So would it start with a point an entry point, if you will, and then funnel into
Right,
the
so then it would funnel into the different
Depending on
centers
what your
depending
need
on the
is.
need. So, for example, if an individual's calling and has a diagnosis of cancer, we're going to funnel them to our cancer wellness. If somebody has a diagnosis of dementia, they're typically funneled over to me and the social work team within our center.
Well, typically, who is the person who applies? Is it the person who needs the support, or is it a member of?
So that's a great question. So it really depends. We have individuals who actually call and say, hey, this is my diagnosis. I need some help. Can you help me here? Whereas other times it's a caregiver or somebody that is supporting that individual, whether it be an adult child. We're able to really sit down with that person depending on the need.
Yeah, like my take is, frankly, a person who might have a dementia, mild cognitive impairment, whatever, is typically not the person who thinks that they need help, because
Correct.
their mind is working differently.
That's right.
100%.
So I would say it's probably very rare that that's the person who actually applies.
You don't hear it so often. You do get it. I got a call the other day from a woman living with Parkinson's, and she said, I'm calling and I need support and I need help. However, to your point, it's definitely typically a caregiver of some aspect, whether it be a spouse, an adult child, a family friend.
Well, like with Parkinson's, which is nothing you want either, but many times your mind is okay, whereas with a form of dementia, your mind is not kind of working the way it used to work.
Right, and that's why it makes sense that a adult child, or a caregiver is the one who calls usually in that circumstance.
Right.
So very often we're dealing with the caregivers. And in fact, we have support programs. Lindsay will tell you a little bit more, but we have support programs for caregivers as well. So it's not just the patient, but it's also the caregiver.
Well, let's talk first the patient, the person who needs the help, but they may not know they need the help.
So typically, I've never really had somebody say to me, right, I want to come to your adult day program,
Right.
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Until they get there and they see what the program's all about, and now they say, I want to come back every day, right? So we have to be able to get them into the program. So how that's typically done, we receive referrals from the community, whether that be through social workers, doctors, making those referrals to the families. We're then getting the call from that family member or from a friend saying, my loved one's living with a diagnosis of dementia, Parkinson's, another neurodegenerative condition, and we need help. They don't typically know at that point what the help is that they need, so that's where the social workers are really able to dive in and fully understand what their needs are. Whether their loved one would benefit from socialization, whether that specific caregiver would benefit from meeting one-on-one with the social worker and really coming up with a long-term plan, whether an individual, a caregiver, right, nobody typically hands you a book and says, here's
Right.
everything that you need to know. So we have a lot of different educational programs as well that really break down what is dementia, what are the services and supports that we recommend, communication strategies, coping strategies,
Right.
legal and financial planning, right? All those different areas that nobody really
this
looks
is done
for.
in what kind of environment? Is it like a group or?
So depending on the need, so if it is a caregiver really just looking for that support, then myself or another social worker on the team would meet with the caregiver one-on-one
Right.
so that they feel comfortable, so that we can really talk about what that long-term plan looks like. Now, if their loved one is also joining the Adult Day program, communications with families never stop.
Right.
So we're constantly in contact with families. We're constantly understanding as things are changing, as we know. The diagnosis changes constantly. So whether it be that we start to see a new behavior in the program, whether they're now sharing with us that different behaviors happening at home, such as wandering, such as having difficulty getting them to shower, we're really there coaching them along the way. So I would say typically when this illness affects a family, it's affecting the entire family, not just the participant, but also the caregiver as well.
So, like within your adult day program, are there different levels in there?
So our adult day program is broken down into different levels. So we can service an individual all the way from the early to moderate stages of dementia. We also are lucky to have the first of its kind young onset adult day program, which is for individuals in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. In that program, you're seeing individuals engaged in age and ability appropriate activities, right? So generational music, right? So we're playing Billy Joel in there. We're going to the studio and doing exercise. We're going to the gym and shooting, in the basketball court. So really keeping them physically engaged as well. As an individual's needs start to change, we're really, as I mentioned, constantly in communication with the families, but we're working on a plan as well as transitioning them over to the next level of programming if there's a need. We always say that we want our activities to be challenging but not frustrating. Right. So when they start to become frustrating, that's typically when we see more behaviors. That's typically when an individual starts to stand up more, is looking to leave, maybe go to the bathroom more often, not respond to a question when they're asked. So we're really able to figure out the best next plan
now,
for them.
Some people are naturally joiners, all right? They'll join a group and they have no problem. And then there are other people who will never join.
Yep.
And how do you try to encourage those who are not joiners in a way?
100%. So
how would you go about doing that?
Right, there's certain individuals that are introverts and are always going to be introverts, right?
Right.
But typically we have other members in the program that are also introverts. So we're very strategic in our placement of where we're really placing them amongst the room so that we can really help form those connections. I think that's typically the difference of an adult day program versus a senior center, is we're really there to help make those connections, to provide the structure and the supervision for them. Individuals that typically, right, don't want to engage as much, we may have to call on them a little bit more, right? And that's not in a way of embarrassing them, but rather really helping them to form those connections and help to create that environment for them. There's a lot of the times, too, where individuals may not respond because they're afraid to get the answer wrong. So our team is there to really help them, to cue them to get the right answer, to even provide a choice, right? Do you want apples or bananas, right? So helping to make that happen as well.
Yeah, it's honestly probably not for everyone. There probably are some people where it's not. It's like hearing aids, frankly. You don't hear. Some people will get hearing aids and others will just fight that forever. And I kind of get the feeling in the real world that probably is the case with, some people just not going to join.
So it's not for everyone. However, because personalities also can change when you have a diagnosis of dementia, that's typically when we're able to help to make it more appropriate, because what I typically hear, right, is if they're not in an environment like ours or something similar, they're home, they're isolated, they're on the couch, right? Maybe they're getting more bed sores because they're not standing up and down. They're becoming depressed. So we really try to find those social connections for them and give them the opportunity to really use their minds in a cognitive setting.
And I think it sounds like the givers, kind of have to learn how to manage that a little bit also.
Absolutely.
So we use a technique called therapeutic lying, right? And a lot of the times it's,
that might be our golden nugget of the day, everyone.
I like that one.
I know. We're going to write that one down.
Therapeutically lying.
It's a challenge, right? Because when you're married for 50-something years and you've always told your spouse the truth,
one down, by the way.
and now all of a sudden you have to come up with, let's call it a fib.
Yeah, of
right?
course.
And typically that fib is actually going to end up helping their loved one and also helping them to avoid getting frustrated. So we're going to go to the JCC for a social program rather than saying we're going to the JCC, right, for the adult day program for individuals with dementia. Right. I know you're retired now and you're really looking for socialization. Let's go find you a social program. And the nice thing about walking into the JCC is you're walking into an all-inclusive
Well, and that's what I was
setting.
just thinking, my Lindsay. I grew up, I went to Roslyn School District, so we were always at the JCC, growing up. And I did like community service there when I was in high school. And that's what's so nice is because it is a community center, right? So you have kids there,
Exactly.
so you don't feel like you're in this like medical setting,
not at
by
all.
any means. And, that's what I think really takes away so much of like the fear, because it does feel like you're just like a social program.
Right, and even if somebody, like, there's also individuals, right, who I can't just bring directly into the program, and I start to learn that based on the intake phone call that I do with the family member. And there's times when I've gone to our cafe and just had a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Right? Tell me about what's going on. How are you feeling?
Well, can or does the caregiver ever get involved with joining them in the adult care?
So I typically don't have the caregiver in the program because we are a respite program. So
Right.
it's really an opportunity for them to be able to have that time away so that they don't get burnt out in caregiving, right? However, when they're first coming the day of the assessment, I'll typically ask the caregiver to remain in the building because it is such a new setting, but not necessarily in the program space. What I find is if they're in the program space with them, oftentimes they are more comfortable to speak to their child or their spouse than to the members of the group, and they may not actually show their full personality.
Yeah, 'cause you just
or
stay with, like, your
engage the
comfort
same way
person.
because it's so much easier to say, you know what, this is boring, let's go home.
Yeah.
Right, than really helping to integrate them into the program.
visualize them saying things that really are, let's call them therapeutic lying, all right? Because that's how their mind works at that point. That they do this and they do that, but they really don't. But they can at least say it in front of people who, and I think people who are caregivers learn
They
that
understand.
you don't fight that. If that's what
right.
you visualize and you think,
Right.
that's okay. We don't debate that, all
Right.
right?
You meet them in their moment,
Yeah,
right? So that's
exactly,
so
yeah.
important with people with neurodegenerative diseases. Meet them in their reality because you're not going to argue with them because in their mind that's where they're at.
That's their
So,
reality.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
I
the
mean,
care,
I've got a lot of situations in my life where I've witnessed and partaken, and you learn, or you should learn, that you really should not, you have to learn
Not to challenge it.
debate that.
That's right.
It's not a fact, but so what?
That's right.
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 That's how their mind
And it
works.
takes time to learn that, right? Because as a spouse, you're used to being able to debate with
well, that's
your loved
exactly,
one,
and that's why the
right?
caregiver services are so important too.
And all of a sudden, you're
But hold that thought because we're going to take a break. After the break, we will continue talking with Ellyn Troisi, who's the nurse practitioner and Senior Director of Older Adult Specialized Services at the Sid Jacobson JCC, and Lindsay Pernick, who's the Director of Adult Day Programs, all about Sid Jacobson JCC, Older Adult Specialized Services. You're listening to Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio.
So I get this call from my grandma, and she's like,
What's a podcast and how much does it cost?
so I tell her, podcasts are like radio shows, but you can download them on any device and listen to them anywhere at any time, and they're free. And then she says,
I see, but where can you find good ones?
and I'm like, go to wcwp.org/podcast and check out the lineup of original shows, or download any podcast app on your phone or tablet and search for LIU Studios. And she's all like,
Oh, that sounds easy.
and then she asked me what an app is.
LIU Studios podcasts, available on any podcast app. You know, those little button things on your phone screen. Just ask your grandkids.
Welcome back to Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio. I'm your host, Kristina Liu, along with my co-host, Otto Los, and we're jumping right back in with Ellyn Troisi, who's the nurse practitioner and Senior Director of Older Adult Specialized Services, and Lindsay Pernick, who's the Director of Adult Day Programs, and we're talking about the Sid Jacobson JCC, all their wonderful older adult programs, and particularly we were talking about the day program. So walk us through, I think it's the first day, how that goes for someone.
So the first day looks different for everybody. There's some individuals who are extroverts and immediately jump right in. And then there's individuals who it takes them more time to warm up. Something that I've really seen is although they might not know all of our names, the environment really starts to become familiar. So the more that we can get them to come back, the first day they might say, I'm not going back there. But the more that we can really invite them back and, encourage the family, I should say, to really bring them back, the more that we can start to really help that routine to form. I typically recommend an individual to attend more than one day a week to help really build that consistency.
Well, that's what I actually wanted to bring up. So what are the hours of the program?
So our program operates Monday through Friday, 10 to 2 p.m. And we have individuals that come one day a week, and then I have individuals that come 5 days a week.
Okay.
I typically always recommend to at least come 2 days a week to really help build that consistency. When an individual leaves for the day, I typically tell a caregiver, go based off of their affect rather than asking them so many questions, because it's so much easier to say, I don't know. I don't know if I want to go back. Right? But if they're leaving and they're not looking upset or they appear to be happy, bring them back.
That time, I just want to jump into that. That time also includes lunch, which is great.
Oh, yeah.
And just to kind of follow up on what we were speaking about earlier with regard to caregivers, the caregivers are so happy to have some time to themselves, whether it's getting errands done, whether it's taking care of themselves, and we really try and encourage self-care for the caregivers, because at this point they're so involved with the other person that they sometimes lose a bit of themselves. So so it's such a great program just for that,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I've witnessed caregiving 24/7 and falling apart completely themselves.
Right,
Absolutely.
and I always say if they...
You have to be a little selfish, frankly.
Yes.
And it's hard, right,
It is hard.
when you're in that
Yeah.
position.
If you don't take, I always say, if you don't take care of yourself,
Yeah.
how are you going to care for your loved one?
Then
Right.
you're going to need two people to be
That's
Right,
right.
exactly.
get taken care of.
So we are very focused on proactive rather than reactive, really being able to respond and giving caregivers all of the resources that they can in that moment rather than when they're in a crisis situation. I want to dive into a little bit of our caregiver support services. We're really fortunate to have our Family Care Connect department, which is, we call it Family Care Connect. It's powered by National Mahjong League. It's focused on really supporting caregivers through this journey, whether that be through support groups, education, one-on-one care consultations, and as Ellyn also mentioned, through self-care. So really providing them opportunities to focus on them. So we might do a yoga self-care workshop. We have our annual caregiver luncheon, which is at the Hendricks Tavern. We bring in somebody to really focus on self-care, but in a way of whether it be sound healing or
mindfulness, nutrition, exercise, whatever's good for the caregiver, we try and give them a piece of that.
We heard from caregivers, these educational workshops are outstanding. However, I want to be able to get together with these individuals in a setting where we don't have to use the word dementia. So that's where these programs really stemmed from, and we really saw such a success in that luncheon. In addition to that, we do run an annual Care Day Symposium, which is an opportunity for caregivers as well as social workers to earn CEUs, but really geared on dementia training. So
what does that look like, this annual? Is it like a convention kind of thing?
Like a conference.
So we have different partners with tabling, so for individuals really to gather from community partners and learn more about different resources that are available, as well as bringing in a specific dementia trainer to really focus on communication, how to address challenging behaviors. We've partnered with elder law attorneys in the past, as well as hospital systems to really talk about the overall caring and aging
When
at
is
large.
this normally?
This event is taking place this year on
April 4th. Yeah. Yeah. The luncheon is on March 3rd, and the symposium is on April 4th. So they're both very well attended, and people really appreciate.
And now, is the symposium free for like an attendee? Like if a senior wanted to go, or how's
We
that
have
work?
a small fee attached. However, something I want to make clear amongst all of our services, that if an individual ever needed any financial support, we have it. We never turn anybody away.
I'm so glad you mentioned, because that was going to be my next question too, because a lot of these cost obviously is a factor to a lot of things. So I think it is important for people to know that there is opportunities.
Like, let's use a rough number for the adult daycare program. What's the charge on that?
So our program is $100 a day
Right.
for the 4 hours, including lunch.
But we have scholarships, and as Lindsay said, we never want to turn anybody away for financial reasons. So we work with people.
Yeah, that's
There are
so
also there's
wonderful.
also services in the county that will help pay for certain hours of respite and
Yeah, but I think
programming.
that's so great, and a great message for our listeners, because I think a lot of times you go, oh, I can't afford that,
Right.
so you tune it off, So
There's also
I think
a lot
that's
of
so
grants
great.
as
Yeah,
well that we
right.
work with,
Right.
but I do want to dive into the Nassau County funded program. So we're one of the agencies that works with Nassau County for the National Family Caregiver Support Program. This program is geared towards caregivers. So really making sure that we're meeting their need, because as we mentioned before, right, if we're not meeting their need, how are they going to best care for their loved one that has this diagnosis? So we provide case management support. We provide the adult day programming for them, which falls under the respite category. So we're also able to actually provide funds for them to also have an aide in the home. We also have supplemental dollars to be able to help them purchase things like walkers and wheelchairs and really help to make that home safe. So we're really looking at the whole family and figuring out how we can really best service them and be able to provide them with all of the supports that they need.
How deep would you get, like, in terms of as things progress and whatnot, and all of a sudden the need for home care becomes more important, or frankly, maybe they get to the point where they have to go somewhere,
Right.
like
Yeah.
a skilled nursing
Right.
facility?
So luckily we have
Would
a lot.
you guide people
Yep.
along the way?
So we have a lot of partners in the community. It starts initially with the social worker really explaining what we're seeing and really talking about what that long-term plan looks like,
Right.
whether or not they have, the goal is to keep them in the house, or whether or not eventually they know once, everybody has different limitations, once their loved one reaches a certain point, which is never an easy decision to make, what the future looks like, whether that be bringing an aide into the house or an assisted living facility or eventually a nursing home as well. So we're really guiding them on all of the resources that are there, as well as funds, right? So connecting them with an elder law attorney to help them apply for Medicaid, or to put,
setting up a trust so that money can be put away, let's say, for long-term care, which is always
It's always a hot topic
a
on the
hot
show. That's why
topic.
Otto's
Yeah.
laughing.
I've been talking.
So, we really try and help people work with the elder care lawyer.
Right. Now,
Or,
trusts are a topic that we talk about a lot of times, and some people need them and some don't.
Correct.
Bottom line.
right.
And it's
And it
not
depends
always
on your
easy
resources,
to figure out
too.
Yeah.
who needs what.
Right.
I
Right.
think the key, right, is that everybody's situation is unique, as well as
Right.
everybody living with dementia, right? Every diagnosis is unique, whether it be Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, another type of dementia, or another form of a neurodegenerative condition. Everyone's situation is unique. There's no one size fits all. So, it's really our job to really figure out what the best supports look like.
And I think, it can be so incredibly overwhelming. And I know, with, Project Independence tries to operate on this mission too, is, having kind of that one-stop shop, feel. because I think, there's nothing worse when you're in these kind of situations. As we said, like, this is the caregiver's first time doing this too, and navigating this world. So I think it's, having, setting up a relationship with an organization that now is able to say, okay, like, listen, so this is probably like a good path for you to go down, so I think that in itself is such an invaluable thing for families.
Absolutely.
To really
we're healthcare professionals, so we understand the system.
Right.
But most people don't understand the system. And, I take care of my mom who is 94 years old and has dementia. And so I understand it from a caregiver perspective as well as from a professional.
Right. I always laugh. I said, as soon as you get to personal, it's like you throw it all out the window.
That's right.
It's like all bets are off,
Right.
So you realize how people can
One
need
of the things that I've learned a lot about is the ADL thing, and then what was the other one we just learned recently?
The IADL?
Yes, the IADL.
Yeah.
Where do you stack up as far as that goes? And I think it has a large bearing for people to understand that, frankly.
Yeah. So we definitely help to educate on that. Every person that enters our program has a care plan. Because we are a social model adult day program, we can only provide minimal level of assistance in terms of transferring, toileting, feeding. However, we provide supervision and cueing. So if an individual starts to need more assistance in the bathroom or with feeding, an aide can actually accompany them to the program. So we do have aides as well that join so that we can really help these individuals to continue to come.
Yeah, I mean, you learn pretty quickly if you've had any involvement that the IADLs go pretty rapidly. Most people who wind up with dementia can't handle most of those,
Yeah.
They just can't.
Right.
That's the way
That's
it is.
part of the disease,
but
unfortunately.
people have to understand that, because then you better figure out a way to handle those things.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then the ADLs, I learned again through your kind of program, if you don't fail 2 of the 6, you are not going to get long-term care insurance.
Right.
So some people think they're going to get daycare paid for through their long-term care insurance. No, not true.
Right,
If
they need to have
handle
that.
their ADLs okay,
Correct.
you're not going to get that.
Right.
So I think these are all the things that people would learn by getting involved with programs like yours.
Absolutely.
The educated consumer is the best customer, if you will. And I'm talking as we talked offline. I have no problem openly discussing it. And my wife does not have a problem talking about it either at this point in time. So
but I think that's what's so special, Otto, is that, you guys did start this conversation very openly,
Yeah,
so.
but why?
And it's like.
Because of my exposure to this.
And Otto's also not giving himself enough credit. He's like the all-star.
Well, it's all
the all-star resident.
because of my exposure with Project Independence. I mean, I got educated, if you will, along the way, and it helps you get through, like you handling your mother.
Yes.
The fact that it's dangerous in some ways, but on the other hand, you know what you're playing with.
Yes. Yes.
And it's not good. It's not pleasurable. As you said earlier, the family gets, eventually I think the family gets much more impacted than the person themselves.
Absolutely.
Because they do not know, It's like people who can't hear. They don't always know they can't hear.
Right.
Right. Another thing I want to make clear as well is, even if we're not the right fit for everyone, we're there to help them along the way. So we want to be a resource to individuals and really be able to help connect them to all of the things that are out there.
Yeah, well, that's
all the resources.
And that's worth a fortune, frankly. If you want to find your way through it on your own, you can go pick and shovel your way through the internet, and not know who you're dealing with. And it's much better to deal with people who have experience.
And what you said earlier, Otto, like, how do we know what level they're at, what if they're eligible to take part in the program? That's what the social workers have expertise in. So they can say, yes, your wife or your mom is appropriate for this program, or, you know what, it's a little bit more advanced than we're okay taking care of, but this is another resource that you should look into. And that's so important.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that leads me back to what I was thinking about, again, like the initial assessment, to me, is kind of important because it kind of puts the cards on the table. And where do I go?
Right, where do I fit?
So
right.
the initial assessment, when a person first comes into our facility, we do have them actually try the program out free of charge for the day.
Oh, that's great. You know, I was actually thinking, is there...
So it really gives them an opportunity to see what it's all about. I have individuals who sometimes will only make it an hour, right? And then we have individuals who make it the whole day. But we always encourage them to come back. And as I mentioned, everybody's situation is different. So if we have to do small amounts at a time and then work our way up to the 4 hours, we certainly can make that happen as well.
You know, on a light note, some people might like the idea of getting the lunch.
Yes.
I don't put an asterisk right next to that.
Absolutely.
The other piece that's important to know is that we have 3 different rooms, and each room has a different stage of development, so that some people, you know, are in the earlier stage. We don't want to put them with people who are more advanced. And so the activities are changed depending upon what room they're in as well, right? What's more appropriate for people who have a little bit of cognitive ability and can remember certain things versus what's appropriate for somebody who has, you know, very little cognitive.
The structure of the program amongst all of the different levels or rooms remains the same. However, the activities change based on the age and stage, right? So we might be doing trivia in one room, but in the next room we're still doing trivia, but it's more challenging.
Right.
So
Yeah, that's
the
awesome.
structure
That's great.
rotates between something physical and something cognitive
That's great.
That
every half hour.
trivia area is what sparked my situation. Now those questions are not, you know, I could do that, you know.
And the nice thing is if an individual doesn't love art but loves word games, right? That next half hour is focused on, so they have, you know, something to look forward to. So we're able to keep them focused, and that's why we break it down based on the 30-minute structure.
That's awesome. That's great. And what's the contact? So what's the initial contact number that someone would call?
So the best way to reach the JCC is at 516-484-1545. 1545.
To learn more about the adult day programs, individuals would ask for Juliana Feigenbaum, and she's at extension 291.
Okay, great. Great. Well, guys, we have taken another break. After the break, we will continue talking with Ellyn Troisi and Lindsay Pernick from the Sid Jacobson JCC, all about the older adult specialized services offered there. You're listening to Project Independence in You on LIU Public Radio.
WCWP is your home for great music and great conversation. You'll find all that and more on WCWP.org. Listen live on the web, check out the lineup, subscribe to podcasts, and stay up to date on the latest station events. Get in touch with us and let us know if you like what you're hearing. And find out how you can support or get involved at the only community public radio station serving Nassau's North Shore. Plus, sign up to get a free bumper sticker. It's all online at WCWP.org.
Welcome back to Project Independence in You on LIU Public Radio. I'm your host, Kristina Liu, along with my co-host, Otto Los, and we're diving right back in with Ellyn Troisi and Lindsay Pernick from the Sid Jacobson JCC, all about the older adult specialized services offered over there. And I know in the earlier segments we talked a little bit about transportation. So now how does transportation work? Is that something that's anyone in the program it's offered to? You to be in a certain area or...
So we're really fortunate to work with Project Independence, which is for individuals in the town of North Hempstead. Our staff actually arranges the transportation, so it takes that burden off of the caregiver. Then in addition to that, we do also arrange Able Ride. So those are our 2 different transportation options for individuals.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. That's so great. Because I know, you know, in Project Independence, and you guys have such a wonderful system. It's very seamless all the time. I could vouch for that. So I just think that that's so huge, too, especially for the caregiver, right? Because that in itself, we all know transportation's a huge burden.
Yes.
You know, and navigating that and drop off and pick up. And if the
Absolutely.
caregiver's working, I mean, forget it. I can imagine all the things that go along with it. So to have that as an option, I think, is such a big piece.
Do you get involved with respite care at home for the caregiver at all?
So we don't have programs for in-home respite. However, we do work with different agencies that we would recommend,
Right.
as well as home care agencies also.
So you could guide people.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Which is also important.
Yeah, and then Otto
Definitely.
during the break had a great question because we've been talking about Sid Jacobs and JCC.
Yeah, well, I
And
mean,
what
the
that
question is,
entails,
do
right?
you have to be Jewish in order to use these services?
Absolutely not, and that's a message we try and get out to people. We have all different religions, cultures, and ages of people that join us at the JCC. It is truly a community center, and so we want to be there for the community no matter what your background is.
Yeah, I mean, I figured, frankly, that, but a lot of organizations start out with a Jewish or any other religion name.
Right.
Way back, maybe it was pocketed that that's what they were trying to do, but then everybody kind of expands into helping everybody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what we're there for, really, to
Right.
help anybody who needs it, regardless of religion, regardless of race, regardless of age. So it's really
And that's a great, I was thinking for the adult day program, now can anyone from any community join? Do you have to be in kind of a localized area to utilize the
We
adult day
take
program?
anybody and everyone, especially with our young onset population, because we are the only ones
Right,
to have this specific program. We get people from the South Shore, from Suffolk
great.
County,
So that's
from
wonderful.
Queens. So as long as they have transportation to get to us, whether from the South Shore we can work with Able Ride. However, from Suffolk County or Queens, it can be a challenge just with going over the border. So as long as they have transportation to get to us, everybody is welcome.
Yeah, well, that's
I'm not going to try to throw you a curveball here, but I read something in preparing for this called "To Whom I May Concern."
I just circled. This is why me and Otto were kindred spirits because I just circled that on my paper.
We're very excited about that
So
program.
we are beyond excited.
It just struck me as like
Yes.
I'd like to find out what
Yeah,
that's all about.
same Otto.
Yes.
So to whom it may concern, to whom I may concern,
Right.
is specifically designed for individuals living in the early stages of dementia that have awareness and have the ability to really talk about their life stories to really help eliminate the social stigma surrounding dementia, as well as being able to talk about what's affecting them, right? So a lot of individuals, I typically hear about driving, right? I can't drive anymore, or I can't work anymore, or when I went to a doctor's office, right, I remember them giving me that diagnosis and how it made me feel. So really giving them a voice to this diagnosis and eliminating that social stigma. So what we're going to be doing with this program, it's in partnership with the Alzheimer's Association, as well as US Aging, and it's going to start off as a sharing group, and then we're actually going to be able to film these individuals reading their letter that will help them to write.
So
How
they
cool is
actually
that?
should write something that
So we are going to actually
Coach them.
coach them.
Yeah.
So we're going to create the script for them.
that's
So
interesting.
based on
It's
everything,
like the writing.
Yeah, that's right. I was thinking,
so
like, I
based on
remember.
everything that they share with us, we'll help to create that script for them, and then we actually will have practices where they're going to read their scripts over and
Oh, how
over.
cool. That's
And then we're
cool.
going to be able to, do this in front of their family and friends and really help to give them, that voice.
Wow, that's
So we're
great.
very excited about it.
Yeah, because it's so different. I think that is so huge. Because we were talking before too. Obviously not everyone's as fortunate to kind of be open and have these conversations. You were saying Otto, certainly has that amongst his family, and I think. To eliminate that. I mean, that's like with anything, right? It's like we always say, just the more you talk about it, and that's why I love having the show, because it does take some of that stigma away, because it can be something that's a very frightening and isolating experience. And I think, giving someone that kind of voice, and it's just such a fun name, too. Great.
Well, just to
great
go a little further on that, like what do you visualize? Like you're going to guide or steer somebody. How are you going to do that? Like I'm the one you're talking to,
Yep.
and
Right.
you want me to do this.
So I initially do a brief assessment with them. I first need to make sure that they have the awareness,
Right.
and then to really get a feel for if they're comfortable being videotaped, if they're comfortable really sharing the feelings that they're experiencing. They do also have consent forms through to whom I may concern, so really giving them that material as well so that they can actually talk it over with their caregiver and make sure that it's something that they both feel comfortable with.
It's really been thought through because
So
it's
it's
coming out of the
affordable?
Center for Dementia. So it's very well thought through in
Right.
terms of having templates and having, you know.
But this is verbal and written.
So
Yes.
there's a company called To Whom I May Concern, and it's a worldwide company. So we're actually getting trained through this company. There's going to be 4 of us that are going to be trained, and so that we can continue to really spread it
Yeah,
I
that's
think
so
it's a great
special.
idea,
I love it.
and raise awareness
Yeah.
on dementia and how
Yeah,
it
and the
really
experience,
affects and the
right.
experience.
Well, it's a great idea for a lot of things, frankly. Like I saw like a cartoon thing. An older man had this thing that he's like older and had issues, but he had this whole write-up that he gave people about when I was this and
Yes.
this and this. So to try to put it that you were a different person.
That's right.
You know, before the dementia, and you were a person who happens to be older, who did have a life,
Right.
and you didn't just weren't born 94 years old.
Right.
Right.
I love when you actually say that to your grandchildren. Otto's like, you might not realize, but I too.
No, but I mean, I think that's hard for younger people.
Yeah,
to-
right,
I
of
always
course.
remind my grandchildren,
Yeah.
I say, you know, like they turned 25. I said, you know, I was 25 once.
Yeah.
Did you ever see the picture of the older gentleman looking into the mirror and he's seeing himself as a firefighter or a cop?
Yeah, right. But I mean,
That's
that's
exactly
the kind
it.
of stuff,
Right.
as you get older, you do have to learn to live with.
That's right.
You know, it's different. You know, you're not who you were then, but you were. You know?
But in a way, you're better because you've built so many experiences and
Oh,
become so much
If I
more
would have known
knowledgeable.
what goes on up here when I was 16,
Right.
I was as stupid as you could be.
The frontal lobe wasn't developed yet.
I went in the Navy. I was 19 years old.
Wow.
I was, as I said, dumb as glass. You know?
That's right.
You know, the life stories really shape you, and that's something that we really focus on in the programs as well. So giving individuals an opportunity to share their life stories to really give them that sense of purpose.
And for the family too. It's such you know, because that's what we love. You know, we did a veterans project when we first started the show, and to hear those stories, and it really was, as much as it was therapeutic for the person itself to get that out,
Right.
you know, for the families to do that. And I think too, you know, with a dementia and stuff, you know, people throw around these words, and that just becomes kind of like the main identity.
That's
You know,
right.
you're forgetting all the feelings and emotions that go along with this, and I think it's so important, you know, for the, you know, the family or whoever to, you know, to hear that.
There's so
stuff.
much more
yeah.
than just their
You're right.
diagnosis.
Well, one of the hard things I think about when you witness people with dementia is they become somewhat invisible. all
Yep,
right?
that's right.
They do not become part of the conversation
Yes.
because they can't basically be part of the
Right.
conversation.
They can't express themselves, and then
Yeah,
they shut
and that's
down.
when you wonder what's
going
you know,
on.
what's going on up there. You
Right.
know?
Those are things that we always talk about in our educational workshop, right? And how to pull them into these conversations and find ways to, because oftentimes what happens, right, is they're just not able to follow it.
No, that's
Right.
true.
So
I
using
mean,
those simpler sentences or less instructions or less words is going to help them to be able to follow it.
Yeah, and I
more.
think, you know, it's I always, you know, we did a segment too, and it was around the holiday times, and it was such, we were talking about that, about like how to include, you know, the person who has, you know, Alzheimer's or dementia in the conversation, because I do, you know, as we were saying, listen, the caregiver, it's frustrating. I get it, you know, on that end too. It's like you don't know how to get that person in it in the conversation. but I
it's
do-
not easy.
No, it's not. So
No.
I think it's so important to have these like tools, you know, for your toolbox.
I
to-
mean, you know, as a caregiver, you can witness a television show together, and all of a sudden you're about halfway through and you realize that this person didn't really connect the dots as far as the show goes.
Right.
You know, so you kind of, maybe a question comes up and you try to regroup a little bit, but,
Right.
you know,
What's also important in that situation is sometimes how it makes the person feel.
Yeah.
Like they may not be able to remember, you know, Jane met John and they got together, or,
Right.
you know, and who came into their lives, but they may remember how it makes them feel.
Yeah.
Last night I was visiting my mom, and she was watching a Tyrone Powell movie.
oh, really, yeah.
And she was in awe. He's so handsome. He looks, and I knew it was making her feel good. She won't be able to tell me what the plot is, but
That's
she
okay,
knows
right.
how it makes her feel.
Well, because he was a big...
So handsome.
Yeah. And
That's
black
what she
and white.
said. In black and white, exactly.
I was like, I also agree with my mother.
Yes, he was.
Well, that's an interesting point, too, that I just heard somebody say the other day. Maybe you should show old movies because it reflects
Absolutely.
back to what they remember.
Yeah, well, that goes with the music,
Right.
Because there was the wonderful music and memory program, and to see, especially with the, it's incredible. I've seen so many documentaries on it, and to see what that could evoke. And I just even think about, like, for myself, right? Music that I liked when I was, a teenager, will take you
Right.
back to, that. I mean, listen, I can't get rid of my love for boy bands, and I'm
Yes.
41 years old.
Well,
and it's like, it's those kind of things. So I could imagine someone, who has, dementia or
Well, we've
Alzheimer's.
talked many times about one of the big differences in generations to me is music.
Yep.
You go
Yes.
back to the 40s, the
Yes.
50s, the whatevers, and the gap, the difference is huge if you look back on it.
It's so interesting you saying that because we have something called memory cafes.
Yes,
which
yes,
we do over and over again. I went for the first time last week to one.
Right.
I hadn't experienced that before, and it was so wonderful because they played music from the era of the people who were attending, and to be able to see caregivers and their spouses dancing together, which dancing is a different part of the brain, and they could do that, and so happy
So
to be
great.
able
It's
to
so
do
incredible.
that, because it was music that they recognized.
Well, that's another one you bring up, dancing, all right?
Yes.
When I went to school, you had to learn how to do the foxtrot, the rumba, the
awesome.
waltz.
Amazing.
In the 7th and 8th grade,
Wow.
we learned how to dance.
Wow.
And that's another big generational
Yes.
thing. You can't go anywhere, like you go to any wedding. I'm one that gets up and, I think anybody can learn to do what's done nowadays, all right?
Yes.
There's really no, there's no steps involved,
So
Just get up
music-
and you move around.
Music is definitely key. We have a lot of music in our programs. We have music therapy, which is really, really awesome because it connects them in such a different way. They might not be able to remember what they ate for breakfast, but they're remembering every single word to every
Yes.
song. So
Well, Tony
it's-
Bennett did a concert.
With Lady Gaga,
Yeah.
right?
And he knew all his songs. He could sing them and this and that.
amazing. Or playing the piano. Individuals remember how to play the piano.
But he didn't remember the next day that he did the concert.
That's right, because it's a different part of the brain.
Right,
It really
right.
is. So
So I mean,
we want to tap into that.
yeah.
So we, in our moderate stage program, we really focus on reminiscing. So if he would have played that show years before, he probably would have been able to tell us about it. But because it was a short-term memory for him, he couldn't recall it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, but it's just, I think that's what's so special. And there are so many things. And that's really what I want, like, our listeners to understand is that, there's so many wonderful programs and you guys are professionals and there's research that is done, that, it doesn't have to be a completely hopeless situation, and I do think, the idea that, God forbid, you are diagnosed with something like this at a young age, that you can get in a place and then kind of, work through it. It's just
Well,
so incredibly
I think you have to get educated and you have to reach out,
For help and support.
whether it be your family to start with. Some people, like, frankly, I am very fortunate. I have a family that is aware, who contributes, who helps. I'm lucky. I know that. There are a lot of people who
we're
do
alone,
not
right?
have that.
And they're
And-
alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're
Which is
alone,
rough.
and it's a
And
pretty
being an
miserable
advocate
position.
for your loved
Absolutely.
one, too.
Right.
Is key, but definitely the support and whether, you don't have family local, really building that support, even if it's through a community center like ours and joining a caregiver support group. I have a lot of spouses now who, they speak to their members of their support group almost daily because they're the individuals that truly understand what they're going through. So they may talk to another friend who says, yeah, I know what you mean. But they've never experienced it. So being able to connect with somebody who has experienced it, you're sharing those connections in a different way.
Yeah, I guess I'm lucky in that respect, too. I have friends I can share that with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Who are in different categories of life.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but as you march along, if you pay attention.
Yeah, that's right. If you stay educated, if you listen to our show, you could have a lot of tools.
Well, like
in
I
that
said
toolbox.
many times, thank God for me. This program to me has been.
Well, listen, I'm just happy I have you, my friend.
Yeah,
So that's really
what I've learned, and hopefully other people who maybe have listened once in a while might have learned.
Absolutely, and I just want to remind anyone that's listening to, please contact the Sid Jacobson JCC. The general number is 516-484-1545 to get the general. And, if you want to find more about the adult day programs, extension 291.
And we just want to thank you for having us on the show today. We're
Absolutely. And listen,
thankful.
we're so fortunate at Project Independence because we, do have you, your agency is part of our toolbox. So you could also always call 311, and our Project Independence social workers are very familiar with all the services over at the Sid Jacobson JCC, so we can get you in contact with them as well. So just really good, the importance of community resources, certainly in that. So I would like to thank you both so much for joining us. Our guest today, Ellyn Troisi, who is the nurse practitioner and senior director of adult specialized services at the Sid Jacobson JCC, and Lindsay Pernick, who is the director of adult day programs. You're listening to Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio.